Hi.
Hello, Ruba. It's nice that you're joining us today.
Thank you. Likewise.
We're waiting on a few others. I'm also still waiting on Mohammed, of course, to join, but we'll be then starting as soon as our speakers and Mohammed is there.
Great.
So just give us a few minutes.
Looking forward.
Nice to see you, Mari.
Very nice to see you, Gleda. I'm sorry I didn't catch you in Glasgow.
I know, we probably walked right past each other. I realized, during the meeting, during the conference, there must have been so many people here. And I don't even know they're here because I only went to my own events. It's terrible. I only went to our own events because it was too packed, which was a pity because I would have liked to have gone to yours and others.
38,000 people.
Wow. Yeah, I think it was unexpected actually, but it was that big.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Mari. Hi, Christian. How are you?
Hi, Cynthia. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for inviting me.
Hope all is well.
Absolutely.
So we'll get started in a second as soon as Mohammed Raouf and our last speaker join. So just give us a second.
Yeah.
Hello, Mohammed.
Hi. Oh, sorry for being late. Traffic is difficult.
Your webinar, so
Yeah, I know.
no problem.
Just a minute.
I think we're still waiting on Ahmed.
Okay. Let's give 1 minute and then we can start.
Exactly. We'll give it 1 minute and then we get started here.
Just a second.
Perhaps I can just say a quick hello from GRC in Geneva. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Great to have you with us, Vera.
Thank you.
Hi, Ruba.
Hi. أهلا وسهلا.
Alhamdulillah.
And I see that Ahmed has joined us as well.
Good.
Wonderful to have you with us, Ahmed.
Thanks so much for having me. Good afternoon, everyone.
So then let me say good afternoon or good morning or maybe even good evening from wherever you may be joining us today. So on behalf of the Gulf Research Center, it is my pleasure to welcome everybody to this webinar entitled From Glasgow COP26 to Abu Dhabi COP28, in which what we want to do is really to focus on the outcome of the recent meeting held in Glasgow, what this means for climate negotiations as the international community embarks on the road to COP27 in Egypt and then COP28 in the UAE. And of course, also discuss what the implications are for energy transition in MENA and especially the Gulf, and how that debate will play out in terms of GCC policy programs as the focus very much shifts to the regions with the next two meetings being held here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Christian Koch. I'm the Director of Research at the Gulf Research Center. I'll just make a very few brief introductory remarks before handing the floor over to Mohammed Raouf, the GRC's Program Director for Environmental Security and Sustainability, who will be moderating today's discussion. So today's webinar is really going to sort of be the first in a series of sessions that the GRC is planning to host over the coming months on issues, of course, in the headlines of importance and relevance to the Gulf. Given that the climate debate has rightfully shot up the international policy agenda, which in turn has also brought about a series of initiatives from within the Gulf region, the Saudi Green Initiative just being one of the latest to mention here. We felt it was a good time to start this series with a focus on the issue of the climate negotiations. But over the coming months, we will definitely also put an emphasis on the many other debates that impact development in the Gulf states, whether from a political, security, economic, or social perspective. So our emphasis here will be specifically also to provide a platform for perspectives from the region in order to better understand the context and the ideas and the context in which many of those debates occur. I also want to point everybody's attention to the 2022 Gulf Research Meeting, which will happen from July 14th and 16th in Cambridge at the university. We very much hope to make this as much as possible an in-person meeting as can be done at the time. We still face, of course, a big question mark about what's going to be possible, but that's what we are aiming for. Currently, we're in the process of finalizing the list of workshops to be held at the meeting, and we then will proceed to issue the call for papers in the coming weeks. We do encourage anybody interested to apply to the GRM with a paper proposal once the call has been issued. And yes, I can already say that a workshop on the climate issue will be included in the lineup. We had a number of good proposals in the initial numbers of proposals received. So for today's meeting, we're really looking for a lively debate, and I'm exceptionally pleased that we have four really excellent speakers with us to get that debate started. Following those initial comments provided by our speakers, there will be an opportunity to ask questions and provide comments, and you can do so by raising your digital hand, posting your question or comment in the chat function. I believe that most of us are probably by now familiar with the Zoom method. The GRC team is also in a standby mode should there be any significant complications. Now, if possible, we would encourage everybody to keep their cameras on, just because I think that gives us a little bit more sense of interactivity. But of course, that's not a requirement, so you are also still free to keep it off if that's what you prefer. But it gives a little bit more sense that it's not just a virtual session. It makes us see each other as well. So in the meantime, I just would encourage everybody to follow the GRC activities and output through our webpage or via social media on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. And with that, let me turn the floor over to Mohammed for the session. I'm really looking forward to the debate. Mohammed, please.
Thank you, Dr. Koch. Yeah, I'm very looking forward also to the debate. It's a very important topic, especially for the region, next two COPs in the region. And we thought that GRC should start early, prepare, especially for COP28, which will be in the GCC region. No need to mention anything else. Let's go to our first speaker, my old colleague, Dr. Mary Lumi. Dr. Mary is a visiting researcher at the King Abdullah Petroleum Studies and Research Center, CAPSARC, and the Mohammed bin Rashid School of Government, team leader, research fellow, International Institute of Sustainable Development, Earth Negotiation Bulletin. Mary has been following the climate negotiations since a long time. I'm sure we will learn a lot from her. Mary, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Mohammed. Would you like me to share my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay, let me do that then. While I speak, thank you very much for GRC while I start projecting, thank you so much for the invitation. It's great to see so many familiar faces here. I'm actually full-time these days at CAPSARC, so greetings from Riyadh. And I have to say, because I'm not sure if this is Chatham House or not, so I won't tell you what, but the energy minister of Saudi Arabia was here at CAPSARC today. And all I can say is that the country is changing very fast. The energy agenda is changing very fast. And what Christian mentioned at the beginning on the Saudi Green Initiative, it's the big framework, but a lot is happening. And I think over the next year, a lot of new announcements are coming on the details. So a great time to be here. Now, I've been asked by Mohammed, my dear long-term colleague, to spend about 8 minutes talking to you about, from my perspective, about what happened at the COP and what it could mean for this region, what this region could do in the next year. COP 28 is very far, so I'm going to focus only on COP 27 for now, but a lot of these issues have relevance beyond that. I'm going to cover quite a bit of technical issues, so if you have any question marks, please write them down and I can either address them in the chat afterwards or in the Q&A. I'm apologize already, there's a lot of technical terms here that we're going to try and cover in a very short time. So COP26, what was it about? It was about, first and foremost, finishing unfinished business on the Paris Agreement rulebook. But it wasn't just that. So that's kind of the setting. The other big thing to keep in mind is that we are still amidst a pandemic and there hadn't been a COP for 2 years. So it was a critical moment in many ways to show that the regime and the Paris Agreement is alive. So in that context, as we came to the COP and the preparations were ongoing, it became clear that the presidency, the UK presidency, really wanted to set the bar very high. And in some cases, I think it was a bit too high. No major deals were expected. The Paris Agreement was there, and it was just wrapping up the implementation guidelines that really was the main target on the agenda. But we heard the Prime Minister of the UK saying things like this is going to be a turning point for humanity and we have to keep 1.5 within a reach, whereas those of us who knew what was already on the table and what was feasible, we knew that that would not be the outcome. So that was a bit of a challenge. At the same time, presidencies do matter a lot. And this is a key thing, I think, for this region as well. Presidencies have an important role in shaping the agenda. And the fact that we had the US coming back to the table and the UK with a very strong diplomatic core, a very strong emphasis, I think that did help. Well, how did it help? The implementation of the Paris Agreement started in 2020, and most countries were expected to table these new NDCs, the new targets. And so it was a key moment of reckoning to see if the Paris Agreement, the so-called ratchet mechanism, was actually working. And there was this 100 billion climate finance pledge also that expired in 2020. So there was a need to take stock. Did developed countries actually deliver? And then what we saw with vaccines, there was a fear that now the most vulnerable, they're actually getting left behind, not just with the pandemic, but also with climate change, with debt, with all these other issues. So this conference was an important moment. And obviously, climate impacts intensifying, emissions still not falling, they're actually rebounding, as we know. Youth is increasingly alienated. We know Fridays for Future, we know Extinction Rebellion. There was a key role to play in sending signals. Now, before going to the outcomes, it's important to understand what COPs do. And again, this applies to the coming COPs as well. There is this unofficial side, which very much depends on high-level diplomacy on the one hand, and then these non-party, non-state actor coalitions on the other. And a lot of the declarations and the action and the ambition setting happens in this space, but it's not officially part of the intergovernmental process. It is only political in the sense that these pledges are not politically binding. They are more aspirational. But there's a lot that can be done there that the UN process, which is more rigid, cannot deliver. So we saw lots of really interesting declarations coming from this COP on methane, on EVs, on coal. There were some new targets. Net zero became a huge thing somehow over the past couple of years, including in this region. We have 3 targets now. And so this space is very important as well. And then on the intergovernmental side, we need to keep in mind this is a process that is governed by these big principles, which means that because this is a global commons issue, you need to take every country into account, because often those who are least responsible for causing the problem, they also are the most vulnerable. And then there's this long-held agreement that developed countries just need to do more. They need to reduce first their emissions, and they need to support developing countries as they adapt and mitigate climate change. And all this raising of ambition on mitigation, of course, is still conditioned very much on how much developed countries show that they're actually leading. So now, quickly to the results before we get to what this means for this region. This is my way of dividing it. There are other ways, but this is now what the intergovernmental agenda actually delivered from the COP, which was pretty good. I was very happy with the result. Madrid was a huge disappointment. Before that, Katowice 2018 was pretty good, but so we really needed good news this year, and I think we got that. On the Paris rulebook side, which means how do countries actually go home and implement the agreement, there were 3 big areas where there were decisions. One of them is how do countries report on their emissions? How do developed countries report on the finance they deliver? And that guidance got agreed finally. And the idea there is a bit of a self-differentiation. So all countries report based on the same guidance now every 2 years, which is going to be a huge task for developing countries that don't have these frameworks in place. But developing countries are allowed some level of flexibility in how they apply this guidance. On Article 6, we now have 2 areas that enable the operationalization of international carbon markets. There's a mechanism that's similar to the CDM, and then there's this broader guidance on how countries overall can link their different mechanisms and cooperate on emissions trading. And those rules are pretty good. No double counting is now allowed. There's some finance that is going to go to adaptation through the successor of the CDM. And the amount of credits that can be carried over from this old period, which many see as hot air or kind of threatening the environmental integrity of the new system, that was quite limited. But there's still some debate on how much that might be. And then now there's a common time frame when countries submit their next plans, 2025, they should be with the end date of 2035, if I remember correctly. So that was standardized. So great, we're done. Then there are 3 issues, 3 areas that are very important for developing countries. And there we have now a work program that's going to start in Sharm el-Sheikh to discuss a so-called global goal on adaptation. We can talk about that a bit later, what it means. And also a process to agree a new climate finance target for 2025. That will start next year, formally in Sharm el-Sheikh. And then there will be a lot of attention on the issue of loss and damage, which is not a huge issue for the Arab region. It's more an issue for vulnerable countries that are already suffering from things like seawater intrusion. And they were very upset that this COP this year did not agree on major issues around financing. So that would be a big thing on the agenda. And then there was this cover decision, or 2 or 3 collectively called the Glasgow Climate Pact. And there's a few interesting highlights. One is that there's increasing focus on the 1.5 target, which has been a really interesting shift since 2015. There is a request for countries to update their NDCs next year, which is quite interesting. And there's language urging developed countries to double their climate finance over the next 4 years. And then all these words that I'm sure you saw in the media on coal and fossil fuel subsidies, they actually made a first appearance in operational language in a UNFCCC decision. So that's why they're quite interesting, because these things tend to be sticky.
You have to speed up, Mary.
Yeah, Okay, 1 minute. So here's my task list. I'm really sorry for going over time. I usually try and avoid that. Homework. There's 5 things at least that countries in this region, like everywhere else, should be doing starting from next year. There's adaptation plans. Adaptation is a priority for this region, and there's a request for all countries. They should have communicated them already. So there's a request for them to do that. There's a request for countries to submit more detailed plans on how they're going to get to their long-term net zero or low emission development targets. Countries can improve their NDCs if they want. We have so-called baselines now missing from 2 GCC NDCs, and that means we can't measure them. So we have new NDCs, but we can't measure them. So can we get the information, please? And then all kinds of reporting related issues. On the major issues, I already told you what is on the agenda. So there are quite a bit of new things that came out from these cover decisions from Glasgow that will be big on the agenda. Need to keep in mind, this is an African COP. It's an African region COP, so not so much an Arab COP, but it doesn't mean that this COP cannot, the next COP cannot bring Arab countries together also. Finally, pandemic, logistics related uncertainties. How will civil society be given a space? How will media be given a space? All these issues are challenging for this region, I think. And then finally, what can we do? How can we bring the region together and show proactiveness? 3 areas: adaptation, concrete things here, natural endowments, so not just oil, but other natural resources. If we really are serious about net zero and we want to be holistic and not just focus on renewables, then let's show how we're going to get there. And then finally, as scientists and researchers, we still don't cooperate and talk enough to each other in this region. So if somebody can, and it's always easy to say, but somebody please come up with a platform where we can regularly meet and at least talk to each other, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Mary, so much. That's very interesting. I'm sure it will open a lot of questions. Let's move to our next speaker, which is Ruba Ajour from Jordan, from Royal Scientific Society. Ruba is a manager of climate change studies division at Royal Scientific Society. It has been involved in many climate projects. Her experience in greenhouse gases, inventories, estimation, GHG mitigation analysis, climate change vulnerability and adaptation assessment. I'm sure Ruba can share a lot of things, especially Ruba was also present at COP26. Ruba, please, the screen is yours.
Hello, I'm happy to be with you. I might duplicate some of what Mary said because, but as she said, it's perspective. I'm giving you my perspective of COP26, and I will give you what I read about COP27 and 8. So I didn't know what group we would have, but I just wanted to have an idea what is COP. COP is a conference of party. It is held on yearly basis. We should have till now 27 COPs, but because of COVID, we have 26. The description of the delegates, those numbers are based on the registered numbers. They are not the actual numbers, but they are all what I have. This COP was marked as the biggest event since they started gathering the COP. It has 40,000 delegates. They are categorized into the following. Delegates, they are 55% of the whole registered number, 30% as marked as NGOs, and observers, we have 6%, and media, 9%. We do have NGOs more than we do have during the whole history of COPs. We do have media more than ever. We do have also NGOs more than the number we usually have. In terms of gender, the favor, it was in favor of male as usual. So we need to work on this. We need to have equity in terms of the number between males and females. And when we look at the COP26, there was a bright spot on it. We do have effective attendance for vulnerable countries, for youth, and for campaigners. Here I want to say, like Mary said, mentioned, it was supposed to be a big event because it was after a year of not having any meetings. It should have put the NDCs into under the microscope. We should have the first cycle assessment of the NDCs. There's a lot of NDCs, but we don't know how much those NDCs are put into action. But we hope that there are lots of pledges by countries to move towards cleaner energy, low carbon economies, and so on. Also, this COP came after the launching of a very important report in August, and it was labeled as the Red Code for Humanity. And we are already facing, and we are already seeing on ground many catastrophes, many extreme events. And we are more than ever sure of how much the human activities are causing this climate change. So the outcomes of COP26, from my perspective, and I will categorize them differently than Mary did. First, those are the agenda items that was under discussion: finance, Article 6, loss and damage, adaptation, transparency, global stocktake, and gender action plan. I will focus on the red items, and I will go fast on them. The pact, the Glasgow Pact, it is like an agreement, and it requests countries to go focus more on emission reduction. And it is the first ever COP decision that explicitly talks about methane or brings out fossil fuels explicitly, and it talks about phasing out, not phasing down, the coal and inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. The highlights of the pact, the Climate Pact, is focusing more or less on having to do more in terms of finance, focusing on nature, considering to include methane into our communication, focusing on how methane can do a lot of good things into reduction or our reduction goals. And it focuses a lot about acknowledging to work on loss and damage, and need for developed countries to put more money into adaptation and into financing, moving away from technologies and those economies that have fossil fuel in them. So developed countries have to support developing countries into moving away from fossil fuel and into adapting to climate change. Finance, there was a pledge to make some kind of delivery plan, and we should work a lot on facilitating access to fund, because we do have, for example, the Green Climate Fund, but countries like us in the region can't access those finance mechanisms easily. So we need to facilitate access of funds. We need the delivery plan for the funds that the countries are putting, the developed countries. And for the first time, the pact or the outcomes of the COP, they said that we regret that we have failed to gather the 100 billion finance that we pledged previously in Paris Agreement. In terms of Article 6, I guess Mary talked about it in a good way, so I will move on. But here I want just to maybe focus about that there was an agreement that to carry over the Kyoto Protocol outcomes. They are around 320 million tons of CO2 equivalent. In terms of loss and damage, it was the first time that it was acknowledged that we need to deal with loss and damage. Developing countries was all the time asking, especially the African countries, they were all the time asking that the loss that have happened previously should be accounted for, and they should be compensated for. So there was an acknowledgement, at least, about loss and damage. In terms of adaptation, we still have to work as part of the two-year program, Glasgow Sharm el-Sheikh. We should work on the global goal. And it's a way of maybe putting in place a mechanism to track and to assess how much there were progress into the adaptation measures. And I guess this is a hard homework, and we need all the support to work on that. As we have mentioned, there was so much outcomes outside the negotiation rooms, and it was those initiatives or those outcomes were a lot better, and they were a source of hope for us all, like the methane pledge, like the fossil fuel subsidies, phasing out of those subsidies and phasing down of those coals, and the agricultural, for example, initiatives, the forestation initiatives, the private investment into net zero. All those initiatives have been outside the negotiation rooms, and they were giving a lot of momentum for the COP. Those are, I tried to capture some of the international feedbacks on the COP. So,
sorry, Ruba, you need to finalize in 1 minute.
Okay, 1 minute? That's too much.
Yeah.
Okay, then I will go here. COP27, it will be in Egypt. As we know, Egypt is more hit by climate change than causing it. So I guess the focus would be, and the agenda would be on loss and damage, on the adaptation part, on nature-based solution. They will try to see this agenda forward. Also for COP in the UAE, UAE has been doing a lot of good things towards accelerating transition, energy transition. And this platform accelerator is a good example. And they have been doing it in partnership with ARENA. And even the UAE has committed 400 million into the fund, so that the momentum starts going on. There was also the agriculture initiative with the USA. This was a bright spot also within the work towards climate action, towards COP28. Here I have concluded that within those 2 years, coming 2 years, we should have a focus on youth, because the youth is the hope within the coming years, because they will have to deal with more and more with that climate change implications. So they need to be there for the negotiations. They need to be the one who say what should be done. And we are a country in the Middle East, a country with so much youth. So we need to train more and more youth to be negotiators and to have a say in everything. And here I want to highlight also that COP28 will be in 2023, so it will coincide with the global stocktake, and this will be a good opportunity to highlight all the good work and all the climate action, and to push climate action more and more, to have a bright global stocktake, or to see that we are doing something within the global stocktake. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruba. I'm sure this will raise a lot of questions, but let's move to our third speaker, which is my dear colleague, Ahmed Samir El-Brimbali. Ahmed is the director of MENA Clean Energy Business Council in Abu Dhabi, UAE. His research interests are in intersection between policy, technology, and consumer behavior to accelerate the transition to clean energy and sustainable mobility sectors. He has a wide range of interests, including energy storage, climate finance, energy efficiency, carbon, hydrogen. I'm sure we will learn a lot from Ahmed, especially on energy front. The screen is yours, Ahmed.
Thanks so much, Dr. Mohammed. Can I just make sure which screen do you see? Because I have a few screens here. You see the full screen, right?
Yes, it's fine. It's fine.
Thanks so much. And good afternoon, everyone. I won't take much time. I think you already have so much information from the previous two presentations, so I'll be brief, and I'm usually quick as well. So I won't speak about COP. I actually will give a background about what's happening in MENA. Then, since you listened about the brief of what are the key outcomes from COP over the last two presentations, then perhaps on the discussion we can map together and see how we can accelerate what I'm going to speak about, given the next two COPs as well. So we'll give a very quick snapshot of what is happening right now in the MENA region in few sectors, which are the sectors we cover within the CEBC, the Clean Energy Business Council. Basically, climate finance, mobility, low carbon hydrogen, and energy efficiency. So just a quick brief about CEBC. We are a not-for-profit membership organization, as you mentioned, Dr. Mohammed, based out of Abu Dhabi in the UAE and Dubai as well. And we cover Middle East and North Africa. So we are the voice of the private sector, trying to advocate on when it comes to policies across the different clean energy sector, clean energy topics across the MENA region. So we cover, as you can see at the bottom, climate finance, low carbon hydrogen, energy storage, women in clean energy, energy efficiency, and electric mobility. We do a lot of research as well, which you are all invited to check it out on the website. It's all for free as well. So in terms of clean energy, so I think not similar to other regions across the globe, the energy demand from with the increase of the population has been increasing. And at the same time, this has not been reflected in the energy policies to consider this increase in demand. So right now, and also the grid mix of the different countries is not also considering this majorly. So if you see the region, we have only about 7% of the power currently coming from renewable energy resources, where, as I mentioned, the energy demand is increasing over time. So we need to ramp up our energy, renewable energy production, and at the same time, reduce the consumption, which is energy efficiency, as I mentioned in the next few slides. The slides have a lot of information. Actually, most of the slides are basically summary of some publications we have already published. So if you'd like to dive into those details, you can actually check them on the website. I just mark it in yellow, the key information I want to mention here. So over the last perhaps 10 years, the total investment that came into clean energy across the Middle East and North Africa was only 14 billion out of 564, which is about 2.5% of the total climate finance and investments globally. With the amount of capital this region has, this is a very, very low percentage, which the region can actually increase significantly over the next few years. And I think, as Mary mentioned, one of the achievements of being the host or the president of COP is really having the countries leading by example and investing in achieving the net zero targets, which what we have in the 3 countries in the region so far. So you see here the different sustainable investment instruments and the amount of investment. So we have to also mention that over the last 5-6 years, the amount of sustainable finance instruments and investment in clean energy has been increasing significantly. But as I mentioned, the total amount of investment as we speak is still very, very low compared with other regions and the resources the region has. There has been also an increased interest in what they call it the sukuk, which is the Sharia compliant investment or the Islamic financing instrument. And this has, I think, will have a direct impact, especially with COVID has actually accelerated the interest in Islamic finance. So we will see this having an impact on the different clean energy projects across the region in the next few years as well. This slide briefly provides you with an overview about what is happening in the e-mobility sector or electric mobility sector across the region. As a way of, since transport is one of the main carbon emitters across the different sectors, especially in the region, it's a very essential sector to consider decarbonizing. And accordingly as well, it's not just about electrification, to be very clear as well, it's about the whole ecosystem, introducing public transportation. And today I was very happy that just today, the rail network between the GCC was announced. I think they started like an association. So soon, hopefully we'll see a rail network between the different GCC countries, which again is a step towards achieving more sustainable mobility modes across the sector. But electrification has been the main hot topic in transportation across the region. UAE has been the leading in terms of the clear policy landscape. Jordan has been the leader in terms of the number of electric vehicles, but it has been quite random. And I think now the country is in a position to restructure the policy situation to encourage more EV adoption as well. Saudi and Egypt has been focusing mainly on the manufacturing side, because right now the good thing about electric mobility, it's a new sector. There's no one country that's dominating the market yet, except for China, if we leave it. So there's a lot of opportunities for the other countries in the region, if not to manufacture the EV itself, to manufacture the other industries that are supporting EV, including batteries, if not the manufacturing of the batteries, manufacturing of the second life batteries and recycling of these batteries, and many other industries that could be supporting the EV industry generally. So Egypt and Saudi have been already investing in building local capacities to manufacture. And I think there's an interesting news that will be coming out of Saudi very soon, which is not the one in the public, another one that will be public soon as well. And in terms of hydrogen, I didn't have the high resolution, so I hope you can see the picture. Next week, actually, you will see an interactive map on the CBC website, which actually this is for hydrogen in MENA, mainly low carbon hydrogen, green and blue hydrogen. So in that dashboard or platform on the website, you can actually filter every single country in MENA per project, per color, per investor, per developer, all the details you might need to know about the project from the credible resources from the companies themselves. So if you see on the top left side, the total amount of investments, announced investments in low carbon hydrogen as we speak today in the MENA region is $55 billion approximately. And the main product of this hydrogen project is mainly green ammonia. And the total amount of production of green ammonia is about 5.3 million tons approximately across the region. This is in about 46 projects, actually exactly 46 projects, and these are announced projects. Only 3 of them have actually started the construction, started the actual build of the project itself, and we have 43 projects are still to be started. But generally, I think there's a lot of ambitions in terms of low carbon hydrogen, which makes sense. I think the region has a very high potential and to be one of the main exporters of low carbon hydrogen, given the region's the potential decrease in the price of renewables, which would make the production of low carbon hydrogen much more feasible than other countries and other regions in the globe as well. This on green hydrogen in terms of energy efficiency, and this has been one of we call it the lowest hanging fruit. So all of the countries can act on this today, even yesterday, or 2 days ago, or 2 years ago. So long time ago. So the thing about energy efficiency is you have in a lot of countries, due to the electricity tariff reforms and the energy subsidies reforms, there have been a lot of incentives for companies and even individuals to consider energy efficiency programs and retrofits for their buildings. So in some countries, there have been already clear regulations for the new buildings. They have to be energy efficient to some extent, but the old buildings and the consumption, there is a huge market to actually save energy, save cost, and also reduce emissions if we enforce clean energy efficiency policies. So
sorry, Ahmed, you have 1 minute, Ahmed, sorry.
I have 30 seconds, I'll be done. And if you look at UAE and Qatar, they have about 90% reduction of the subsidies. Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, about 61%, and that's between 2010 and 2019. Some other countries didn't change the tariff or the subsidies, like Egypt. Actually, Egypt doubled the subsidy. Kuwait didn't change anything, and that's why you can see that as well on the impact of the energy efficiency programs and the projects as well. This is a new model, which I think is very interesting. I put this slide because I think the importance of the model of super ESPOS, which is basically a government entity that would support and facilitate the work of the energy service companies in the countries. And you can see in the numbers in yellow how they have been having a very huge positive impact in terms of the number of energy efficiency programs and projects across the country. I'll skip this one since I have only few seconds. So how can the MENA region improve its energy market? Briefly, very simply, there are three key areas that they can do a lot of work in. Policy and institutional. Elimination of fossil fuel subsidies, and I usually laugh when I say that because it's not easy, and it's going to take time because there's a lot of politics when it comes to that. And then you have to invest more in clean energy. And I think today or yesterday, the new budget of Saudi Arabia gives a new a leading by example model of how the other countries could do and should do. Invest in the decarbonization of transportation. Hopefully, we'll have more net zero pledges from the other countries in the region. Have unified regional standards to remove barriers to trade and investment. And so hopefully we can have like some kind of trade agreements between the countries in the region like we have in the EU. Financing, we need to have more support for the different size of clean energy projects, not just the mega projects. We need to support startups as well. We just finished a study which will be out in 2 weeks about the support of the scarcity of venture capital and private equity funds for clean energy. And there's almost none of them in the region. So there has to be support for these companies as well and for R&D. Then have more and focus on the sustainable finance instruments. I mentioned green bonds and green books. In the last 2 seconds, I mentioned adopt innovative solutions, energy storage, implement different kind of smart grids using blockchain and AI, and perhaps also more focus on hydrogen and having a roadmap to actually invest in all of the topics I mentioned. So I think the key thing is to have a clear roadmap where the country will actually know where are the key resources for them and how to actually make sure that they are utilizing these resources in the best way they can. That's all. And I spoke so much so quickly, so I hope that was clear. Thank you so much.
That was very clear, very interesting. I'm sure energy sector is very important for climate change and for the region. We will we'll have a lot of discussion on that. But last but not least, let me give the floor to Cynthia Bianca, visiting fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations based in Berlin, where she is working on political security and economic developments in Arabian Peninsula and Gulf region and relations to Europe. Additionally, she is a senior analyst at Gulf State Analytics. Previously, she was a research fellow in the European Commission project on EU-GCC relation. Cynthia, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, and thanks a lot to my co-panelists who have provided an excellent overview of what are the latest developments, but also where we are going from here forward. I think my role would be more useful, my contribution could be more useful if I were to focus on the external perspectives, and in particular at the European perspective. As you probably know, the EU is trying to position itself as the global leader in terms of climate action. And they have been, not only the EU as an institution, but also European countries individually have really been quite visible from the point of view of climate diplomacy, but also in terms of trying to drive forward some of the changes that we want to see. They were, initiating the net zero trends that we were talking about, and they are quite active in terms of rethinking the energy transition. In that context, I think it might be useful to look at how the Europeans are looking at the Middle East and in particular at the Gulf on the topic of climate diplomacy. We have named this event from Glasgow to Abu Dhabi, and I think that one of the key developments and trends that we will see happening between Glasgow and Abu Dhabi will be a much stronger European focus on the Middle East and North Africa and the Gulf specifically on the topics of climate protection and energy transition. There are a number of indications in that sense. First, 30 seconds of context. As you probably know, the EU itself has published a document, a sort of a binding document, which was made binding by subsequent laws, titled the Green Deal. And they have spent a long time agreeing among themselves what they want to do, and they have come up with a specific set of policies that are included in that document. That process has just recently concluded, and then now the focus has shifted completely to how do we use that document, that policy, the Green Deal, in our external relations as Europeans. And so what is happening now is precisely that process of, once we have agreed what we want to do internally, let's agree on how do we use these tools externally. Clearly there is a big focus on the wider, on the closer neighborhood for Europe, which is, of course, North Africa and the Levant. And there are already ongoing conversations in terms of assisting these countries with the energy transition, and also with the decarbonization of transport, the transport sector, for example, which, as we've heard, is a big polluter. And these conversations are definitely going to become even more intense as we approach the next COP in Egypt. But together with that, a number of European actors are already working towards Abu Dhabi. The reason for that is, of course, because the Gulf, in the Gulf, you have 1/3 of the global reserves for oil and gas, and fossil fuels are so relevant for the climate agenda. So to be able to push and encourage an energy transition towards cleaner sources of energy in the Gulf is therefore a very strong sort of objective, also in terms of pushing forward climate goals. There is an ongoing work that is going in that direction. You probably are familiar with the fact that Germany signed a memorandum of understanding with Saudi Arabia on hydrogen specifically, which covers many different points, from technical cooperation to investment financing to joint investment in the establishment of related infrastructures, with the long-term objective of importing green hydrogen, in particular from Saudi Arabia. While there hasn't been a formal memorandum of understanding with the UAE, Germany has been even more active with the UAE on the same topics. There is a technical and political partnership called the German Emirati Hydrogen Partnership, which has been coordinating for years on the topics of how to sort of encourage existing strategies in the UAE to step up hydrogen production, especially green hydrogen, and again transportation to Europe. A more recent development is that France is now also interested in following in the footsteps of Germany, and as a matter of fact, French officials are already working on a similar memorandum of understanding with both Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates on hydrogen specifically. And if you happen to look at the agenda of the visit by President Emmanuel Macron in Saudi Arabia in early December, you'll see that the very first day he was there, there was a big event, sort of a business council meeting with both French business people and Saudi counterparts, and some representation at the level of officials and ministerial people, where the first item on the agenda was precisely hydrogen. And this is a relatively sort of new item, if you wish, but it's one that is really taking steam in a way that is quite unique, especially in the context of Europe-Gulf relations, where everything happens slowly and everything happens, gradually. But on this topic, on the topic of energy transition, we have seen an acceleration, especially in the past couple of months, that is quite unprecedented. And so, for example, the European Union itself insisted on having an EU Energy Day at the Expo, at Dubai Expo 2020. And they wanted to have the European Commissioner for Energy, Kadri Simpson, as the guest of honor. That's a quite high-level representation. And it's not the kind of high-level official who travels a lot normally. What you probably haven't heard before is that Franz Timmermans, who is the person within the European Commission who is ultimately responsible for the implementation of the Green Deal, so he's the highest level official in Europe's climate diplomacy, is planning to travel to both Saudi Arabia and the UAE in the very first months of 2022. Now, of course, COVID allowing, as every European official tells me, but that's where the direction where they are going towards. As you know, and when you have this sort of activities in terms of sort of high-level political dialogue, you always have policy work that goes hand in hand with it. And as a matter of fact, the EU itself is working on its own Gulf strategy, which should be published again first half of 2022. And it will be a broad sort of comprehensive document that will deal with a number of issues and domains. One of them would definitely be climate. And so there is already work that is being done in that direction, you know, by the officials within the sort of the, let's call it the Climate and Environment Ministry of the European Union, which is a technical name is DG Climate. And people who work within DG Climate are already working towards, you know, to contributing to this Gulf strategy of the EU, specifically focus on what should be done on climate and the energy transition. So I guess, you know, I really wanted to give you all of these pieces of information to say that it's been quite interesting and in a positive way, in a positive sense, to see that a lot of developments are happening in that regard, which I think have really the potential to be beneficial for all sides involved, because of, you know, how sort of how impactful the cooperation could be, but also push forward the concept of cooperation between Europe and the Gulf, of existing cooperation between Europe and the Gulf, which is already quite advanced in terms of especially the energy domain. And if we go back, you know, even if we want to go back to the 1989, which was the first agreement between the EU and the GCC countries, the first policy document, already you had a lot of focus on energy. And you can find that, you know, between the ups and downs, of course, the context changed, but you can find it very interesting evolution up until the 2010 joint action plan for the implementation of the agreement, which then expired in 2014. But if you have the time to go back and look at it, you will see that at least 6 domains of that JAP document focused on questions that are extremely relevant for climate, the environment, and the energy transition. So I do believe that in the next policy documents, we will see a number of those initiatives sort of upgraded and boosted up. And that can give us an indication before, you know, the documents are published within the first 6 months of 2022 of where that cooperation could be going and what the potential might be. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That's very interesting. Now we have a very limited time. If you allow me, I'll just take less than 1 minute, just quick comments about what I have heard, because this is very interesting. Of course, everybody call it, as Mary said, this is the Africa Cup, but again, this is also Africa and Arab region Cup. It's the same problem. It's an Arab country, and for UAE Conference of Party 28, it's very important that UAE start coordinating and preparing, whether on official level or unofficial level, from now. That's right in line with what Mary said, because that is very true that there is a little coordination on various levels in this region. And this is what is missing. And another point is that Ruba mentioned the youth. Yes, unfortunately, from my experience and many others, youth and civil society in the region are not really well engaged. So since the CUP will be in the region in the next 2 years, we need to really engage the people, especially civil society, different major groups, and youth. This is very important. And for energy, it seems like it's very challenging. The region is doing a good job, but still a very challenging, but it's also a lot of opportunities for the region. I think the region can play a lot and can benefit a lot from CUPs, especially in energy front. And of course, all its application in various sectors, whether agriculture, transportation, and so on. Just very quickly, I don't want to take much time. I will open the floor for question and answer, but I'd like very brief question or comment. But please introduce yourself and your organization very quickly, less than 1 minute, so we can give a chance for all our panelists to react to different questions. Yes, the floor is with who will kick start. Anyone? I think a lot of hot topics.
I have something I'd like to, oh, sorry. Did I interrupt anyone? I wanted to also say congratulations. This is a wonderful seminar. And I think that I learned a lot. And from all of these speakers that have been saying, I think there's a, a conglomeration of good ideas and good things to move forward on. And actually, I'm not sure if, well, I maybe wanted to also double what you're saying, Mohammed, on the youth and also on the cooperation. And thank you, Mary, for raising that. And I wanted to say that, in fact, I've been talking to Ms. Urshka Skirt from the World Business Council on Sustainable Development precisely on that topic. And I wanted to see whether, I don't want to put you on the spot, Urshka, but perhaps you could also introduce yourself and maybe talk about one of the ideas, because I think that the enhanced cooperation is really key. And I think you've all kind of in a way signaled it. And perhaps this could be, this webinar could be, the enabling environment to launch that forward.
Okay, excellent. I will give her a chat, but I have a list. So I have Mawahib first. Please go ahead. Very quickly.
Yeah, maybe just a quick reaction to Vera. I think there are many raised hands, so I don't want to interrupt today. So I look forward to the webinar where we'll further deep dive into the topic of mobility electrification, but certainly there are a lot of things that we need to consider also from the business perspective. So World Business Council is a non-for-profit organization that represents largest corporations. So we need to together consider of what are the specific roadmaps and possible pathways for different regions, including the MENA region, of how we could transition to more sustainable transport. But as said, there are many raised hands, so let us leave this topic for another occasion.
Thank you, Urshka. In fact, we are having another seminar very soon on green mobility. Urshka kindly will be joining as a panelist. But let's move to our Mawahib. Please go ahead.
Thank you for this opportunity. Mawahib Al-Taib, researcher at National Center for Research at Engineering Research Institute. I would like just to highlight many great projects for rural and semi-rural, either for electrification or even, you know that Sudan is Arab African countries. We are still talking about cooking fuel, which affect you know that still we are talking of firewood and high emission of carbon. I want to highlight this. And another comment, it's about the MENA Center, which activities focus on clean industry. I didn't see in your map Sudan. That means you are not considering Sudan in the area of your activities, because it's Sudan in potential in clean industry. And I think one of the project ideas in TNA, we propose like efficient boilers to raise the temperature of the boilers by using solar energy, and some you see, like research activities. I would like to hear from you in this issue. I think it is very important, and I think if you are interested, we can link you with the Industrial Association Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Mawahib. Dr. Christian Koch, please.
Yes, thank you, Mohammed, and thank you to everybody for their really interesting comments. Just two quick sort of questions I throw out there. One in response to Mari, also when you talked about youth frustration. And then, of course, we saw in Ruba's a slide there briefly, the comments by Greta about blah, blah, blah. I'm just wondering, you know, where is, in the Gulf region, of course, it seems to be that mostly at the moment, much of this climate initiatives are sort of top-down driven. They're initiatives by the government. Where does the youth factor come into this? Are we likely to have youth frustration at one point in the Gulf, and what can we do in order to encourage a little bit more also of youth engagement? And I think Mohammed's already been working on that a little bit. And maybe just briefly a question to Cynthia, and thank you very much again for this, highlighting the attempts also of Europe to get the Gulf engaged on this. Where do you see the real motivations behind this? I mean, are they looking at the potential that the Gulf could really play a leading role, given the fact that they are, you know, again, the leading oil producers in the world, and therefore a leading role from their side would be really consequential overall? Or is it simply also because they see these countries as important for financing? What's sort of the motivation behind this European focus on the Gulf? Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. Let's take another one. Tanzib, please.
Hi, everyone. This is a quick question. Maybe it's for Mari, actually, but anyone else who has a comment on this, feel free to step in. What's happening in terms of is the UK government, the COP presidency, collaborating with Egypt? And then is the UAE also collaborating with Egypt to make sure there's some kind of synchronicity, I guess? I know the UAE has quite a strategic relationship with Egypt, so it'd be interesting to hear what the politics is on that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Very interesting question. Any comments before, because this is the last chance to ask or to give any questions before we go to our panelists. Okay, I see no other hands, so I will give like 2 minutes for each panelist, starting with Mari.
Thanks, Mohammed, and thanks for the great questions. I think, first of all, I think the concern was that after COP26, all countries dropped the ball because there was just so much hype and so much attention, and then kind of that's it, and people are tired. And the good news for this region is that because we have the COPs, that's not going to happen. But I think it's good that all stakeholders make sure also that it's not enough the governments say they're going to announce new plans next year, and we're going to hear more from Saudi Arabia, as I said, but we need, I think, multiple stakeholders to support this COP. And I think that's why it's so great that we're here today, and we should have more of these conversations. So I just wanted to speak to the youth point quickly. Yes, I agree. Youth is very top down in this region. And I don't think we will be seeing encouragement of youth frustration. It's just not part of the fabric. I think youth, as Ruba was saying, will be very useful to invest in youth in their jobs. So let's have new delegation, new negotiators. I thought that was a great idea. That brings new ideas and new thinking. Let's have awareness raising across governments, so that young people who work in government actually start pushing and mainstreaming the issue. Let's encourage youth climate entrepreneurs. And on that topic, I think the work that Ahmed and the WBCSD is doing in this region will be critical. We don't see much of businesses participating in the UNFCCC. And so this is a huge opportunity to show the power of clean business in the region and do something great. And there's lots of engagement tracks for those. A couple of words on key players. You mentioned UAE, you mentioned Saudi, so you mentioned Egypt, but Saudi is something you need to keep in mind. This is the key country in the region in climate negotiations. And so also for external partners like the EU, that's why they're engaging with Saudi and with the UAE, because if these two countries move, that kind of unlocks, they're seen as the doors to the region. But Saudi is going to be key in these two COPs, because Saudi has a strong position And therefore, I would say, remember the concept circular carbon economy. If you engage with the Saudis on that, that's a door opener, that's a conversation opener. And it allows for all kinds of conversations. I won't go into detail on that, but that speaks to Cinzia's point about why does the EU want to engage? This is a huge hydrocarbon region that now says, look, we want to collaborate, but we want to do it in our terms. And CCE is kind of one expression of that. Final point on Tanzi's question. Yes, there is now a tradition of the previous presidency collaborating with the next presidency, because officially the UK will remain the presidency up until the very start of the next COP. So the UK and Egypt will be collaborating very closely. I'm pretty sure that the UAE will also, given the strong ties between Egypt and the UAE, they'll be collaborating very closely. There's another informal, semi-formal role called the global, the high-level climate champions. So Egypt will nominate a non-state actor, high-level person who's going to be together with Nigel Topping, who was the UK one, and they're going to be accelerating all this sort of non-state actor business together. So there's a track to look into. And then one further thought, what we can do as researchers, I think, is raise awareness in the region of, if you look at the Glasgow Climate Pact, there's two decisions that are key. One is under the COP and the other one is under the CMA. For example, look at the one under the CMA that has more stuff in it. This is the Paris Agreement track. Look at what that decision calls for from countries, and then go to your governments and have conversations with them. Say, look, this is what you should be putting on the table so that we as a region can show that we're actually engaging with the process. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ruba, please.
I guess after what Mary had said, I don't have anything else. She had covered all. We have to focus on youth. We have to focus on doing lots of things at the ground, bottom up. We have to involve entrepreneurs. We have to involve private sector as well. I guess we will make the impact within those 2 years to come. And I have the concern that Mary raised previously. I don't know how much space we would have as activists or as civil society within those 2 COPs. We are a region that is ruled by governments.
I see. Thank you so much. Floor is for Ahmed, please.
Yeah, I have a very bad short memory, and I didn't know I had to take notes. I thought that's we'll take every question after the question itself. So I try to answer whatever I actually remember, and Mary didn't cover, which she covered all almost. But the Sudan part, I think that it was mainly regarding the map I presented. So unfortunately, we don't cover Sudan within the research we do, because we cover Middle East and North Africa, and that's driven by mainly the members we have as companies, private sector. We are a very small organization with very limited resources. So hopefully, I'm really hoping that at some point we'll be able to cover all of Africa. There's a lot of positive news, a lot of developments, so hopefully soon. But right now, it's not under our scope yet. Engagement of youth, I actually was thinking while Mary was speaking, and I don't know if that's actually the reality, but what I can observe is recently, especially over the last 2 years, there has been, I don't know if that's again by design, or it's just what happened is there have been a lot of a change in terms of having a lot of youth in leadership positions, not just in the climate negotiations in the region, but also in the different government positions as well. So I think having this, even if it's top down, then let's get the youth at the top. You don't have to make sure that always the youth are actually down and they are the ones who are actually getting frustrated. So let's get the right youth at the top, because now it's not about the age anymore. It's about getting someone who is actually well aware of the needs of the market, what needs to be done, etc., and using the expertise of the people within the sector as well. So I think UAE, it has been the case, Saudi recently as well. We can see a lot of this, and Egypt, of course, as well. So I think that's one key area, which again, I don't know if that's by design, but if it's not, then it should be by design. It should be somehow we encourage more youth by programs, different educational programs, leadership programs, to accelerate actually getting the youth in these leadership positions. I think that will have a difference. I think all the other questions I wrote down, Mary almost covered. So I have nothing else to add.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you. Last but not least, but we still have one thing to do after Cynthia. So Cynthia first, please.
Thank you. I think, like I would agree with Mari. There is a sense in Europe that you know, if you get Saudi Arabia on board, if you get the UAE on board, you're kind of in a stronger position. And then, of course, I mean, it is, after all, the big prize. Saudi Arabia is, you know, the largest oil producer. And that is quite clear, you know, from a diplomatic point of view as well. So that, I mean, that doesn't mean that, I mean, I don't want to give you the impression that now the Gulf has become more important than the Mediterranean from a European perspective on climate and energy. That is not the case. I'm saying that, what I am saying, I guess, is that it is equally important, and that's already, you know, something. And Dr. Koch, you know very well that, you know, it is something to say that, you know, from a European point of view, now the Gulf is as important as the Mediterranean, or close to, because it's not usually the case. And I guess, yeah, the reasons are because it's the big prize, and it can trigger a lot of other developments, such as more cooperation also in the Mediterranean itself as a triangulation approach. Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
I want to
Cynthia.
point out something, if I may. Also,
Okay.
at the negotiation level, Egypt is a strong participant. As part of the Arab group, we have also to focus on Egypt and Saudi as well. They are strong negotiators.
Exactly, and Egypt also is leading the African negotiators in climate change. Just before I give the closing for Dr. Koch, I just, in one sentence, so we can end up with something for everyone, I'd like each speaker to just mention one recommendation. Then we have the next 2 COPs in the region. So what we need to do, what is missing, what is your recommendation? Mary.
Make this region a proactive participant. Look at the climate pact. I put the link there. Start from there. Speak to your governments, and you know how we speak to them as researchers. We have conversations, and sometimes we write papers, but there's so many ways to do it.
Yeah, I open it, but not all governments are easy to reach, unfortunately. But anyway, let's go to Ruba.
Invest in youth and involve more the private sector into climate action.
Definitely, private sector is very important. Ahmed, please.
That's for the attendees of the governments.
Sorry, again, I didn't get it.
For the attendees or for governments?
No, out of this. What do you recommend? Could be for us, for government, from your perspective.
If it's for government, I would recommend the difficult one. Remove subsidies on fossil fuels, put carbon tax, invest more in renewable energy, all different sizes. If it's for the attendees, advocate for the all of the above.
I see. Okay. Cynthia, please.
I will have one for the attendees in general and everybody. I think, you know, we should advocate for something much bolder. You know, if we, you know, many times governments and industry leaders have their own reasons to always have caveats and constraints about imagining a different future. And to a certain extent, you can sort of accept it. But from our point of view, I think we shouldn't. We should really be bold and aim high and push for, you know, creative solutions, and don't let ourselves down in constraints and caveats, because it's not, I mean, we're not obliged to, so we shouldn't.
Yes, sure. Just we are finishing in a couple of minutes. I hand the closing for Dr. Koch for final remarks.
Well, thank you, Mohammed. And not much to say now from my end as a closing. I just want to, of course, thank Mari, Ruba, Ahmed, and Cynthia for great remarks. That was really comprehensive, and I've learned a lot and took a lot away from today's meeting. I think that was a good starting discussions, and I'm sure that we're going to have a lot more, especially considering the fact that we do have the new tech in the next 2 COPs in the region. So for now, I mean, I can just thank you all for participating in our event. Encourage you to keep in contact with Mohammed. Mohammed is going to be very active on a lot of fronts on this issue in the coming months. And as he already indicated, we are going to also, at the moment, planning for a webinar on January 12th on the issue of green mobility. So we'll have more information on that. And in the meantime, I can just encourage you to keep in contact with us at GRC. So I thank you very much for your participation today. And I very much look forward to staying in contact and keeping the discussion going. It's going to be an important one. So
thank you, Dr. Koch. Just before we go, also we will, in a week or so, we will post a summary for this event in GRC website. So I will do that, look for it. I would like all of you kindly to open your screens so we can take a group picture of all the participants.
With wide smiles.
Yeah. GRC team is doing that. Thank you so much. I think it's fine. It's fine. Okay.
Perfectly fine.
Thank you. Thank you all to our participants, to our speakers. Have a good evening.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks a lot, Mohammed. That was